News Radio 700 WLW.
If you're in an office setting and you start going off like that, regardless of what level of job you have, whether you own the place or a mid-manager or just an employee, my guess is, and it's just a wild guess on my part, you might wind up in the HR office. I'm just thinking maybe that would happen. Standing by is someone who knows. She owned her own company at the age of, I had to look twice at that, 21. And Victoria Pelletier has done a whole lot of different things in a very short amount of time. She's worked for Nike, American Express. She now works for IBM. She's on their board of other businesses that help women succeed in male-owned businesses. And I can't believe she would have put up with anything like that. Victoria Pelletier, how are you on this glorious Friday?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
So, have you ever been involved in any company, either something you've owned or one that you worked at, and heard an employee do something like that?
Sad to say, it's unfortunate, but yes, I have. Early in my career, there was a couple of senior leaders I worked for who were prone to have rants like dear Tom Cruise.
You know, it's funny because I was too. I worked at a place where the guy that ran the company was maniacal. He was maniacal for a number of reasons, but yeah, there was all kinds of abusive language and abusive behavior, but it was at a time where there wasn't a chance to go pursue it from an HR standpoint. This is going back many, many years. The bad old days were really the bad old days, weren't they?
Absolutely. There's been a massive shift in the expectations of leaders in business and creating the right kind of culture, environment, and therefore satisfaction and engagement of its employees.
But this couldn't go. I mean, you said you heard it. I heard it. But in today's environment, you can't get away with this, can you? I don't know of any company of any size that would allow somebody, an employee, regardless of his status inside the company, that would be allowed to say something like that. Do you?
Oh, you're absolutely right. I mean, this is not to be tolerated whatsoever. I mean, most companies have formal, could be called either employee relations or a complaints and appeals division where you can, the whistleblower type thing where you can go and report these kinds of things. Absolutely would not be tolerated, certainly not in companies who are looking to create the right kind of environment for their employees.
And he apparently did it again 2 days later and then had 5 people walk off the set, walk off the workers, whatever they were doing, walked off the set and they weren't going to put up with it. But if it wasn't an independent film company that he apparently had money in, he had something like $700,000 in this to ensure that the film would get done and not be interrupted by COVID-19. Regardless of all of that, who would want to work for somebody like that? I mean, I see things like this, and we work in an environment, as you well know, Victoria, where there's it's an employer-driven market right now. It's not like it was even a year ago when there were so many unfilled jobs. But I mean, I think you really have to draw a line. I wouldn't want to work in some place like that, and I know you wouldn't. So what would you tell somebody that's mixed up in that maybe is just collateral damage on this and not necessarily being yelled at by someone who has some authority? What would you tell them to do?
Well, so first of all, it's interesting there's been this outcry from other actors and whatnot who are saying they support Tom, and I think it's more the messaging behind it. I think we're all fatigued from COVID, and everyone wants to get back to work. So I think there's an understanding, and that's a little bit of empathy in understanding the position he's come from. But to your question around as an employee and being the recipient of that kind of language and behavior is unacceptable. So to an employee population, I would sit down with them. I mean, apologize for the fact that they've had to endure that kind of, verbal abuse, number one. 2, make it exceptionally clear, be very transparent that this is not tolerated in our organization. And although the actions taken upon whomever behaved like that need to remain confidential, be very clear that there is action being taken and that this will not be tolerated. And we're looking for the employees and others to raise their voice if they see such things.
Yeah, but there's also the reality of working inside that kind of an industry. Tom Cruise is about as large as you get inside of pictures. If somebody starts making waves against Tom Cruise in that industry, you can get blackballed in a hurry. I mean, you really have to know what the landscape is before you go in and try and do something about this, right? I mean, if somebody that's a bit player or a bit actor or might be a second cameraman and they start standing up to Tom Cruise, they're probably out of work in Hollywood.
Absolutely. And that's the big difference between Hollywood and the corporate environment. Right, in Hollywood, you do have a very difficult time in saying something, and as you said, kind of being blackballed. So there's ways you approach it in terms of, maybe not raising your voice to it, but making a decision over whether you're prepared to work in that environment and walk away, versus a corporate environment where you have the opportunity to, raise the concern. Actions are taken. The leaders who choose to act that way are dealt with. And then, it's a small world and news travels fast. And so it's a very, very different in the corporate environment for sure.
Oh, it is. Yeah. And in the film business, film production has been curtailed. The work is not anything like it was a year ago. And the people that are on this film are probably happy to have work, but there's nobody that should have to put up with that kind of abuse. Victoria, good stuff. How can people find you? This is good insight. What should they do in case they got a problem? Because I think you're the person that might be able to help out. How can people find you?
Thank you very much. They can find me, Victoria Pelletier, on LinkedIn, or find me through my personal website, victoria-pelletier.com.
And it's spelled Pelletier, kind of the French-Canadian pronunciation there.
Exactly. You can thank my French-Canadian husband for that.
Victoria, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. You have a great day.
Thank you.